I still remember the laugh before I remember the music. It wasn't loud. That's the thing people don't tell you. The most humiliating laughs are usually casual, tossed out like they cost nothing. I was standing near the edge of the studio floor tying my sneakers when I heard a woman behind me say, not even trying to whisper, "Too big to dance." This should be good. A couple people chuckled. Someone else snorted. No one told her to stop. The room smelled like hairspray, expensive perfume, and that sharp rubber scent of new flooring. Bright lights bounced off mirrors so clean they almost hurt your eyes. Everyone else looked like they belonged, lean bodies, branded outfits, effortless confidence. And then there was me. Thick thighs, broad shoulders, plain black leggings I'd owned for years. I could feel my body taking up space in a room that had already decided I didn't deserve it. I didn't turn around. I didn't snap back. I just kept tying my shoe slower than necessary because if I stood up too fast, my face might give me away. That was the moment the audition became more than an audition. I had walked in that morning telling myself I was here to dance. Just dance. No expectations, no fantasies. But standing there listening to strangers debate whether my body was allowed to move to music, I felt something crack open in my chest. Not anger, yet more like a deep old bruise getting pressed again. People stared in that careful way where they pretend they're not staring. A few phones hovered at chest height ready. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Not ugly, not weak, just visible. Too visible. The kind of visible that makes people think they're entitled to an opinion. The coordinator finally called us to line up. When she looked at me, her eyes flicked down and back up like she was checking a box she didn't want to check. "You're here for contemporary?" she asked. I nodded. Yeah. There was a pause, a tiny one, but I felt it. "All right," she said, already turning away. That pause said everything. As we waited, I stretched quietly in the corner. I've learned over the years that when people underestimate you, silence is safer than explaining yourself. They don't actually want to know you. They want confirmation of what they already believe. The first few dancers went out. Technically flawless. Beautiful lines, perfect bodies doing exactly what bodies like theirs are expected to do. Every time one finished, the judges nodded, scribbled notes, murmured approval. The room clapped politely. When my number was called, the energy shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough that I noticed people sitting up straighter. Enough that the woman who laughed earlier leaned forward like she didn't want to miss it. I stepped onto the floor and felt the familiar flutter in my stomach. Not fear, anticipation. The kind that comes when something matters more than you want to admit. The music hadn't started yet, and I could hear my own breathing. I thought about all the nights I practiced alone in my apartment, pushing furniture aside, dancing barefoot on a floor that complained with every step. I thought about being told when I was younger that I had great rhythm, but the wrong body. I thought about how many times I'd swallowed that sentence like it was medicine. Then the music hit, and something inside me settled. I didn't dance to impress them. I danced the way I always dance, grounded heavy, in the best way, letting momentum do its job. I used the floor instead of fighting it. I let my weight become power, not a problem. Every movement felt honest, not polished for approval, honest. About halfway through, I realized the room had gone quiet. Not the bored kind of quiet, the attentive kind. I didn't look at the judges. I didn't look at the mirrors. I focused on the music and the feeling in my chest, that rare alignment where your body and your mind stop arguing and just agree. When the last note faded, I held the final position for a beat longer than necessary. Not for drama, for myself. No one clapped right away. That silence stretched, thick, uncomfortable. Then someone in the back let out a soft, "Oh." The coordinator cleared her throat. "Thank you," she said quickly. "You can step aside." I walked off the floor with my heart pounding, not knowing what any of it meant. As I passed the woman who laughed earlier, she wouldn't meet my eyes. The rest of the audition blurred together. I was placed in the last group, given harder combinations, less time. I could feel the unspoken expectation prove it again and again and again. As if one good performance was an accident my body didn't deserve credit for. At one point during a break, I overheard two dancers talking near the water station. "She's strong," one said. "Yeah, but you know they won't actually pick her," the other replied. "It's not the look." Not the look, I laughed quietly to myself. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. When it came time for the final round, the judges announced a freestyle section. That's when things got interesting. Freestyle doesn't care about your measurements. It cares about truth. The music changed. Slower, heavier, something with space in it. I stepped forward again, feeling the weight of every eye. I could sense skepticism, curiosity, maybe even a little fear. Because when someone breaks the rules you didn't know you were enforcing it, makes you nervous. I moved differently this time. Less controlled, more raw. I let emotion bleed into the movement. Frustration, joy, defiance, softness. I wasn't trying to be palatable. I was being real. Somewhere in the middle of it I caught my reflection again. Sweat on my skin, hair coming loose, a body moving exactly the way it was meant to move. When I finished, I didn't wait for instruction. I just nodded once and walked off the floor. This time the silence was followed by applause. Not polite, not immediate, but real. One of the judges stood up. He didn't smile. He just looked at me for a long second and said, "Thank you for that." That was it. No grand announcement, no dramatic confrontation, just a shift. I could feel it. The same people who had dismissed me earlier were suddenly recalculating. Compliments came out awkwardly, like they were being spoken for the first time and didn't quite fit in their mouths. Very powerful, so unexpected. You really owned that. I nodded, said thanks, gathered my things. I didn't wait around to see what they'd decide. As I walked out of the studio, the sun was lower light slanting through the glass doors. My reflection followed me across the polished floor, no longer something I wanted to avoid. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt calm. Because the truth is, winning isn't always about getting picked. Sometimes it's about refusing to shrink when the room expects you to. Sometimes it's about making people confront the limits of their own imagination. I don't know what they said about me after I left. I don't really care. I know what I felt in my body that day. I know the room fell silent, not because I proved them wrong, but because for a moment they couldn't look away from something they didn't understand. And that silence, that was mine. So I want to ask you something, be honest. Do you think people judge talent, or do they judge comfort? And how many times have you seen someone underestimated, not because they lacked ability, but because they didn't fit the picture someone else had already decided was right? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening.